ahead and dive in. Thank you so much for everyone who is here already. If we haven't connected before, my name is Kelly and I'm the founder of Impact Travel Alliance. Can we get a quick, a couple of comments in the chat? Where is everyone tuning in from today? I'm in New York. I know Travis and Adrian are in Costa Rica. We have someone from Idaho, Bermuda, Germany. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Seattle, Costa Rica, Delaware. Amazing. Welcome, everyone. New York, someone else, Mississippi. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. I'm really excited to talk with you about the launch of the limited release of this new film, the Bodhi Wave, and also chat more about Bodhi Surf and Yoga down in Costa Rica. As I mentioned, my name is Kelly and I'm the founder of Impact Travel Alliance. If you are not familiar with Impact Travel Alliance, we are a global community and nonprofit, and our aim is to improve the world through travel. So we do this by helping travelers understand how to explore in a way that has a positive impact on local communities and our environment. I'm joined today by Adrian and Travis, two of the co-founders from Bodhi Surf and Yoga, and I'm going to pass it over to them to give a quick introduction on themselves.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Adrienne, one of the co-founders here at Bodhi Surf and Yoga. Nice to see, well, know everyone's here.
And I'm Travis Bays, also co-founder of Bodhi Surf and Yoga, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here sharing with you guys today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Kelly.
So to kick things off with my first question for you guys, I'd love to hear more about Bodhi Surf and Yoga. It was on my bucket list before you guys reached out and we connected. But for anyone who's not familiar with the concept of what you guys are doing, can you tell me a little bit more about your property and the experiences that you have there, and what sets it apart from other surf and yoga retreats?
So yeah, we are a surf and yoga camp. We are located in the very beautiful Bahia Ballena. It's in the Osa Canton in the Puntarenas province. So we are in the southern Pacific zone. If people have been to Costa Rica before, oftentimes they go to the north. So they go to the Nicoya Peninsula, which is also very beautiful. In comparison, I would say we're much greener down here. Probably there's a little bit less tourism. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are no multinational like hotel chains south of Jaco. Is that right? Or
Manuel Antonio.
So that's 45 minutes north of us. So it's a lot of small businesses, a lot of locally owned businesses, which is really cool. And yeah, so we offer week-long surf and yoga camps. We have three main products, we'll call them. One is our adult surf and yoga camp, so that features 5 surf and 5 yoga. Then we have a family surf camp, and we actually just started a 2-week body surf and yoga camp, which features a lot of ocean awareness. So I would say that, well, our property is located in the heart of the community, and that's one thing that I would say sets us apart from a lot of surf and yoga camps that are sort of oftentimes away from the community, sort of away from the hustle and bustle of what might be going on. They're oftentimes sort of, in their own little zones, which is fun. But we have what we call a community engaged experience where people can, walk around town and buy a coconut, from one of the coconut dudes that, zooming around town, or buy bread from the bread man who's probably going to actually like go by on his bike. He's sort of a famous character in our town. And yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on what sets us apart a bit.
Yeah, so we are very small and we only allow 10 guests per week. And we believe that small is beautiful. That way we can really engage with our guests and build deeper relationships with them. Because really our mission at Bodhi is to use surfing, yoga, nature immersion, and community engagement as tools to facilitate an experience that hopefully inspires you to make change back home. Our surf lessons, for example, are done inside of a marine national park, which is a really radical setting to provide marine education while doing surf lessons. And our yoga instructor, my lovely wife, Pilar, who's not with us today, meaning in this chat, has 20 plus years of teaching yoga and really focuses on the philosophy. Most surf and yoga camps, as Adrienne alluded to, are all inclusive, set away. We are not all inclusive. We want people to have a community engaged experience. And also most surf and yoga camps hire a yoga teacher from outside of their business to come in and do yoga classes. But our teacher is within the business and she understands the business model and purpose. And so I think our yoga classes are very unique in that sense too. I can go on, but I'll let you take the mic, Kelly, and we can continue on.
You touched upon a lot in there that I want to talk about, but I think maybe to start, just thinking about this concept of combining surf and yoga. I know a lot of people do both. A lot of people do one or the other, but usually people aren't necessarily grouping it together as these are two practices that are so well suited to go together. Can you guys tell me more about why you chose to do it that way?
Well, when we started our company, again, like the founding members of this company were both equally interested in surf and yoga. We had, a few of us that were into surf, and then Pilar that was very much, on the yoga path in life. And so when we started the company, which was actually 10 years ago this year, we kind of, we did a little surf here, a little yoga there. We combined them if people wanted, but we largely let people tell us what they wanted to do, and then we would just sort of, try to accommodate to that. In about 2014, we started realizing something, which was that the people that did both surfing and yoga, they just were getting something more out of the experience. So we decided to just solidify that and offer what we knew would be the best option. So we came up with our classic surf and yoga camp, which has, like I mentioned, 5 surf, 5 yoga. And what we found was, there are a lot of people that come down and they say, oh, I just want to do surf. I don't really care too much about yoga. Or I actually am scared of surfing. I don't think I'm going to be very good at it. I think I'd rather just do yoga. And we say, of course, do what you want, but why don't you just sign up and try? Because we get a lot of people, like a lot of people that try the activity that they're not, coming for, and they end up really enjoying it. And in fact, sometimes even more than the one that they came for. Surfing and yoga are obviously physically very complementary. Like we have, when you're surfing and using a lot of muscles to do yoga, can sort of release a lot of the tension that might, a lot of us are used to sitting on, the computer these days, and the surfing and yoga all sort of, utilize the upper body quite a bit. But even more so than that for us is sort of like the philosophical component of combining surf and yoga. Both of these practices, as we teach them and as we do them as individuals, we go a lot deeper than just, say, riding a wave or doing, any pose like a handstand or whatever. Like, they have deep philosophies that are so very linked. And that is the part that I think is most interesting, There's a lot to be learned from both of these practices, about, what we need, what we don't need. It turns out it's not a lot, in these activities physically, but just generally in life. And just being content with what we have, this idea of connection, in surfing, it's connection to the ocean. It's in yoga, it's connection oftentimes to something deeper within the self, So yeah, we found that they're just super complementary, and guests have really enjoyed both together and have definitely, I would say, progressed better when they do both. I don't know if you want to add on.
Yeah, I just think that one of the main reasons why we combine the two is that the philosophies align. And Adrienne said the simplicity of both activities is really what draws us to them, I think, and the connection. And that yoga, all you need is a mat. And even then, you don't need a mat to practice yoga. It's just more comfortable to do it that way, right? You can use a towel. You don't need a bunch of other additional equipment to practice yoga. And surfing is similar in that you just need a board and the ocean. And so both of these activities are very simple in terms of consumption. You don't need to buy a bunch of things in order to do them. Also, it's interesting because a lot of people think that as like a surfer, if I do yoga, the first thing they think is the physical benefits, right? Oh, I'm going to be more flexible. But at the end of the day, as a surfer and as someone who has dabbled in yoga, I'm not a practitioner. The most important takeaway for me is the breath and how I can learn to breathe properly, or improve my breath through yoga, and how that will allow me to stay calmer and better in critical situations when I'm surfing, for example, and also in life. So there's a lot of parallels. We just launched a really cool lessons from surfing and yoga blog and video on YouTube. It was kind of like a poem that got turned into a video. So if you guys want to learn more about our belief in terms of the benefits and lessons that we've learned from both of them, that's a great example. Yeah, I can't do that. That's my wife, Pilar. She can't do that on a surfboard, though.
She makes it look really easy, you know?
Thinking about this physical connection that you have in both practices, and that's what you're talking about, I think is very interesting. I actually learned to surf in Costa Rica, and the person who was teaching me was like, oh, it's like doing this yoga pose. And I was like, I don't do yoga. I have no idea what you're talking about. And now I do yoga and I love it. And I have no idea why I didn't start it sooner, because there's so many of these benefits that do come from that physical component, like breathing, for example. And then you carry that through to the rest of your day and you're like, oh, it's like that. And you think of it when you're working on something completely different and you're not within that practice in that moment. So I think that that parallel between what you're doing physically and how that manifests throughout the rest of your day, even when you aren't practicing, is incredibly interesting. And taking that a step further, a lot of what you all are talking about in both the business model that you have, as well as the practices and experiences that you have at Bodhi, you're talking a lot about self-awareness and sustainability and how those are linked as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about your belief around how all of that is connected?
Yeah. It goes back to the simplicity of both of the activities. And for me, surfing, for example, is extremely linked, obviously, to the source of the ocean. And so when you are out there enjoying this activity, being propelled forward by this wave, you start to fall in love with that activity. And then when you start to learn and understand how that wave is generated, where it's coming from, and the negative impact that you're having on that resource, I think you start to ask questions, and asking questions is the beginning to living a more low impact life, right? So for example, I come to Costa Rica as a guest. My main reason is because I want to learn how to surf and get up on that board. Well, I'm up on the board, I'm smiling, I'm receiving the energy from the ocean. And then Travis comes in and tells me all these fascinating things about Mother Ocean and how we can live a little bit more low impact. And it kind of just starts to develop into a love affair, so to speak, right? So the idea really is that people fall in love with the resource that's providing the action. And, I can't really speak too much with respect to yoga, because again, I really don't practice yoga that much. But from what my wife has told me, yoga for her is really off the mat, right? It's practicing all the values and the lessons from yoga off the mat and into your life, which is leading a life of service and leading a life of kindness from the heart and being more soft and generous. And I just really think that the more we can connect people to Mother Nature through developing a skill, for example, my thinking is like, oh, if I'm going to learn to scuba dive, I'm more likely to take care of that resource versus like learning to play baseball or basketball, which is, so to speak, a man-made sport on a man-made field, on a field that doesn't change much. And although you might be immersed in nature outside playing baseball, it's just not the same.
I always say that you don't protect what you don't know. And so having that very intimate experience with nature and being able to connect in that way certainly makes you an advocate for it. Adrian, did you want to add on to that, talking about that?
I was just gonna, to go kind of on riff off what Travis was saying. Like, I would say that being surfers and yogis have informed who we are, obviously, in large part. These are huge components of our personal lives, and also where, our values come from, and then those values have been reflected in the business model. So there's no way, I don't think, like this was a path that's gotten us to the point that we're at, and there's been many steps in this path, and the path continues. We don't know exactly where it'll take us, but these concepts of what we want to share with our guests, like we mentioned, just falling in love, having a simpler life, having a lower impact, living true to your values and your purpose. They're not like, I would say, huge complex ideas. I think that they're pretty simple. And so maybe that's what this experience is designed to do, is just to like take away all that. We get really distracted, I think, in modern society. It's incredibly hard not to, but to come down here to a place with a slower pace of life and to just do something quote unquote simple. It doesn't feel simple necessarily in the moment, surfer yoga when you're doing it, but that's because sometimes the simple you can go deep with something simple too, and I think that that's what we're trying to share with this specific experience.
I know that mindset of a transformational travel experience in that way is actually part of what led to the creation of this film, the Bodhi Wave. Can you all tell me a little bit more about that story? I'm going to play the preview in a second, but I think it's really interesting to hear the backstory before you see anything about the film.
Yeah, so what happened is that Gary and Stacy, two lovely guests, were down here celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, a very special moment for them. And when they got back home, they made some changes in their life that kind of sparked some curiosity in their daughter, and who is the filmmaker, Jazine. And one big change that they made is they got rid of the like single-use coffee. What is the thing called? The
Keurig, I think. I mean, there's different brands, but I think they actually did have the Keurig. So it's just like those little pods of coffee that are plastic that get thrown away.
And so their daughter was like, whoa, why are you doing that? And so they started talking a little bit more about the experience they had with us. And then she wanted to do an internship, but that internship started to develop into more of this idea of like, I'm more curious about diving deeper into why my parents changed their behaviors and attitudes once they got back from Bodhi. Can I explore that? And so, we said, sure. And it's 4 years later, and we have the final version, that we're launching privately because she wants the film to get into film festivals, and we're stoked. It took long, but we're stoked with the final result, and we hope that it serves as a spark to light the fire and get people to start thinking about how can they simplify, how can they look outside, as Bill said in the documentary, and see that everything is kin, that we're all related, that we're all one big family. Those are big words, but if you think about it, it's not hard to do, to wake up and look outside and be like, whoa, this is all sustaining me. This is all amazing. I need to incorporate some changes in my life to really respect this environment. Because as Maya said,
it's all we have.
It's all we have. It's everything. Giving away a few key points in the film. Whoops.
But yeah, I just add on, I think like for Jazine, one of the real interesting things was like her parents were here for a total of 7 days, and they came back and they made, they felt like they'd had some kind of revolution here. And so she was like, that's really like crazy, for this to have been such a short amount of time. And so she was curious to investigate what exactly was going on down here. And so she came down with that intention, to spend 3 months here, to interview whomever she needed to interview, and really just try to figure out how was it possible, that this, could have happened. And yeah, so.
I want to go ahead and share the preview for it. Can you all see my screen still? Yes, cool.
Me parece que es un abordaje innovador vincular una actividad como el surf y también como el yoga con la sostenibilidad.
So a lot of the stuff that we do is actually outside of the traditional boundaries of a surf and yoga camp.
So when surfing impacts your life so much, you can transmit that love for nature.
Yoga brings presence into your life. And when you start paying attention, nature around you is beautiful enough. You don't need more distractions.
You know, Bodhi is improving the community of Bahía Ballena. That is beyond a doubt true.
Creo que en un país que depende muchísimo del turismo, que depende muchísimo de las áreas protegidas y las áreas marinas protegidas, creo que hay un impacto muy fuerte sobre esos ecosistemas.
The fact that every piece of plastic that's ever been created still exists in some way, shape, or form is big.
How can we protect the wave, and how can the wave even give us more benefits to reinvest in the protection of the local environment?
You can use tourism not only as a force for sustainable development in your community, but also helping to influence your visitors to take actions once they get back home. Like if that happens, for me, that's success.
Primero tiene que haber un cambio de mentalidad. El ser humano se ha olvidado que es parte de este planeta.
So we're hoping that things like Bodhi Surf School can keep people up at that energy level of being connected to nature.
We're always trying to look for something to blame, you know, and at the end, if you want to change something, change yourself.
We want to inspire people, but we want to inspire other companies.
There's one thing that will get everyone or a majority of people to care and protect for the environment.
So all of the attendees, of course, you will receive information to be able to see that, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was able to see the preview as well today. And there's so much that the preview itself even touches upon in terms of some of these trends and themes. And one thing that I do want to talk about is the fact that you guys are really practicing what you're preaching. So you're thinking about how do we transform the world through these experiences that allow you to connect closer to yourself, but then it's also deeply incorporated into your business model. You all are a B Corp as well, and I know that you have a lot of your own projects within the business model that are both traveler facing as well as just what you're doing in the day-to-day practices behind the scenes as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about your commitment to a holistic approach to sustainability?
Yeah, Kelly, thank you for showing the trailer. It's funny when you're on the outside, kind of, I don't know, looking at the trailer again, it gets me motivated. But you know, when we look at Bodhi and its purpose, right? Bodhi being a Sanskrit word coming from India, sorry about the motorcycle, that when loosely translated means enlightenment or awakening. The idea is that we all become enlightened and awakened and conscious. And one of the big challenges that we strive to overcome is really transforming our guests, so to speak, right? And so what I want to talk about, and then I'll pass it over to Adrienne, is how we really look at the guest experience from pre-trip, on-site, and post-visit, right? So for example, one thing that we were noticing is that a lot of our guests were showing up with really crappy bug spray, sunscreen. Some people were showing up without reusable water bottles. And we put that responsibility on us, right? Instead of pointing our finger and saying, Kelly, you're coming to Bodhi and you have banana boat sunscreen that's toxic to your skin, that's killing coral reefs. Your bug spray is terrible too, and you're not bringing a reusable water bottle. We said, okay, how can we help solve that problem, right? And we started to provide our guests with a pre-trip sustainable purchase guide that have products in there that are, generally speaking, either B Corp certified or free trade or 1% for the planet members, but products that are better for them, better for the world, right? And you know, partnering with Clean Canteen, Badger Balm, All Good, Sunski, Patagonia, all these companies that are doing good for the world, we wanted to really get those products into the hands of our customers. When they're on site, they do the yoga, the surfing, the community engagement, nature immersion. That's all easy breezy. We just facilitate the experience. And then post-visit, the idea is that because of what we've done pre-trip and on-site, they're more likely to take some action when they get back home. So we ask our guests to make a pledge. And then typically what happens is they sign a digital pledge, the Ocean Guardian Pledge, and that sets them on a path and provides them information on how they can be more sustainable or low impact in their life. So for example, the first email after you come, Kelly, isn't like, come back, 30% off. It's like, okay, Kelly, here are some tools for you to take what you've learned and what you felt here back home to make change happen. And if you want to come back, we're here, you know. So that's one aspect of the business, is really empowering and educating our guests, because that's the way we feel we can scale our mission. Some of the community stuff, maybe Adrienne can talk about.
I just wanted to clarify, I make this mistake often. You said free trade, but I think you meant fair trade, just in case anyone caught that.
If anyone caught it, it would be our audience.
But yeah, I just wanted to just like really hone in on this one point that Travis said, and then I'll talk about the community stuff too. But we see this not just as a fun, you know, relaxing vacation. We hope it is those things. We see this as an educational experience, and I don't think a lot of tourism providers look at things like that. So like any, you know, like any experience that is educational, there are different stages of it, right? So we're trying to capitalize on the fact that before people come, they're excited. You know, this is also a good time to provide them with educational resources, a different way of thinking, just a new perspective, right? That's obviously solidified while they're here. And then when they get home, they're like, yes, it's over now, but I want to keep this going, this feeling that I had, you know? So yeah, that's definitely like our main thing with the guest experience. And then in the community, I mean, we started off, it's actually funny to look back. I've been doing a lot of reflection this year, being, as I mentioned, it's our 10-year anniversary. But, you know, when we started off, it was super small, you know, this was just us. Like, we've always been incredibly like purpose driven, you know, and interested in having a big impact. And you know, I think that in the film, the one line that struck me today, every time I watch it's a little different, but it's a friend of ours saying, you know, if you want to change someone, change yourself, you know? And so we took that very seriously. We thought, okay, whatever, we're trying to do that in our lives, but we're going to also try to do that with our business. So, you know, we were doing, I remember, weekly beach cleanups and, you know, just trying to get the community involved, you know, a surf lesson, maybe in exchange for helping clean up the beach. And as time has gone on, I would say we've tried to scale and be more, you know, utilize our strengths as well. So now, you know, last year, or I think in late 2018, Travis was super instrumental in starting a community foundation called the Somos Foundation. Somos means we are. What it is an umbrella organization that sort of raises and can channel funds from a number of different places to a number of different projects happening within our region, which we call the Costa Rica area. So that goes from about 20 kilometers north to 20 kilometers south, more or less, along the coast. So it's a lot of coastal communities. And there are a number of really cool projects in there. So I'm working for them now, doing some marketing. Travis is on the advisory board, or the board of directors. So this is a really cool thing that we're super stoked that Bodhi has aligned with through our Travelers Philanthropy program, which we started in 2014, which was really just a way to sort of link the guest to the cool things that are happening in this community, again, as education, but also as a resource for cool community projects, right? We have been donating approximately 1% to 2% of our earnings on the vacation package towards that since that year. And with the founding of the Somos Foundation, the money now goes towards that goes then is distributed to whichever project is in need right now. So we have like the lifeguard, security council, we have some educational programs, food security, lots of cool stuff. I won't be able to name them all. I don't know if you want to add anything about Somos.
No, you did a great job. Just to add to the Travelers Philanthropy part, though, the idea being that we weren't asking our guests to donate, we were donating on behalf of them. And then through taking action ourselves, we noticed that people were more likely and inclined. I thought it was quite rude. Some Travelers Philanthropy programs, you come and you spend thousands of dollars and then you ask the guests, please donate to these causes. And I think like before you do that, you have to make the step forward and lead by example, right? And you can motivate people to do that. Through you taking the step into action. And just, we do have programs that we've created on site utilizing our talents, like Adrienne said. So we have our Surf and Service Saturday event, which is going and doing some either reforestation or beach cleanup inside of the Marine National Park. And for the guests or the community members that show up, they get free surf lessons. And then Pilar has her Yoga for the Community program, which was at its peak, a weekly yoga class, free of charge for those community members that normally don't have access to yoga. And then we link in with a lot of organizations that are doing other things, and I think one of the keys to success are really really listening. And I've said that before, listening to the community and being active on different boards or as a volunteer in different organizations. So you're really listening not only to one, siloed effort, but to all the organizations that are active in your community. And when you start to listen more, then you can start to develop a more strategic and holistic plan on how you're going to contribute back to your community using your business model. So anything else?
I was gonna say, it's hard to figure out what our passion is. Like, is it surfing? Is it yoga? Is it hanging out with our guests? Or is it this community stuff? Because I feel like you get us going on the subject and you forget that we're the surf and yoga camp. The other stuff is, it's just all an excuse to do this other. We feel very passionately about all of this. And we feel very privileged to have been able to find a way to sort of link it all together in a way that really does work.
I think that's what, I know that you guys have just touched upon so many, what seems on the surface like diverse subjects, but it really is all linked to this idea of becoming more aware of yourself and how that's connected to the rest of the world. And then from there, creating a ripple change of effects throughout everything that you're doing. And that's everything from thinking about if you're surfing in the ocean and you're picking up plastic, and then you're gonna think twice about the single-use plastic that you're using. Or it could be something on a larger scale where you're like, I just went to Costa Rica and I stayed at Bodhi and I saw all of these different things that they were doing involved in the community, involved in environmental protection. And then that makes you make a different booking decision at a later date because you want to continue to book with more socially and eco-conscious brands in the future. So it's a lot of diverse subjects, but it really, I think, stems from that idea of how can I become more self-aware of who I am and how that fits into the world and has an impact on the world, and how can I shift my decisions to have a better and more positive impact at the same time. So I want to shift gears for a bit here, unless, were you going to jump in and say anything, Travis, to that? Okay.
I do have one. I have one more. Yeah, you nailed it. I have one more thing that what you just said sparked. And for me, it was always, I've struggled. I'm very sensitive and I get really worked up about the state of the world sometimes. And I get really worried. And like, I've found that personally, acting from a place of worry or anxiety or fear or just any of the negative emotions, of course, they're normal and they're, going to come and go. But for me, actions taken on those are never they never feel right down the line. So, instead of all this like pointing fingers of like, you guys should be doing more, you should be doing more, we've found, and I think this is, you know, where we act from, is just like, we're just gonna start, and we're gonna do what we do, and we're gonna do it from a place of love, and we're gonna do it from a place of like something that we're passionate about and something we feel strongly about, and we're going to try to get as many people on board as possible in a real, you know, a real way, give them a real like taste of what that could look like for them too, and just hope for the best, you know, hope that that's enough to spark some inspiration or be a catalyst for change. But what we've seen is that, yeah, any action taken, you know, in love or just like positivity and just like hoping for the best, you know, understanding that it's a complicated situation, this global situation that we're in. But also, you know, I think if enough people get on board with this positivity thing, that it could really have huge impacts.
I totally agree. I think it definitely can be overwhelming at times, especially when your eyes are open to everything that's happening within the world. But it's just one foot in front of the other, and taking one step at a time. And sustainability is a journey. So we're all at different places in that journey. And I think that what you guys are doing that's so interesting is you're able to attract people just from the concept of saying, hey, it's Costa Rica, it's beautiful, or come down and surf with us, or come down and do yoga with us. And then you have this whole mindset change that occurs because of that in a non-preachy sort of way. It's just kind of like, oh, by the way, here's all of these interesting concepts that go along with that as well. So to switch gears a little bit, so at Impact Travel Alliance, we have been having a lot of conversations around reopening destinations and the ethics of travel during the pandemic. And I know that Costa Rica recently reopened its borders, at least to travelers from the United States, except for only 6 of the states last time I checked. And so I wanted to talk more about that. When we connected originally, I was talking to you all and it was like, oh, I want to come down there, but no idea when I'll be able to. And now I'm in New York, and I am a part of one of the states that can go down and visit Costa Rica right now. So for any travelers who are thinking about potentially visiting Costa Rica right now, what are your thoughts around the country reopening its doors at this point?
Well, it's so complicated, and it's so hard to know what's going on, you know, how long any of this will last, etc. But my personal belief is that this is kind of a long haul thing. You know, this is going to be something that we are navigating and having to deal with as as all of us, all of the nations on this planet, all of the individuals on this planet. And, you know, I think that there's a lot of unknowns about the virus itself, obviously, right? But what I do believe personally, and I'm speaking personally, is that unfortunately we didn't set up our global system for this shutdown. We didn't have anything in place beforehand. And so now we're sort of trying to change as we go and figure it out as we go. I do believe, obviously, health is important, and taking all the precautionary measures are super important, especially for the vulnerable populations who are going to be, you know, more at risk. However, I do think that the economic realities of keeping things closed for extended periods of time are just as scary, if not more scary, for a lot of people on this planet. And so I think if there is a way to balance economic health and well-being, physical health and well-being, the health and well-being of systems, it's gonna have to be like kind of inching and going backwards and doing this. And, you know, we live in a country where I personally trust the government's decisions. I don't think that I don't think that they've made the right decisions on every single, you know, place, but I do think that it would be really hard to make the right decision all the time right now, what with changing circumstances. But what I think Costa Rica is doing is being super proactive, and, you know, to assure the health and well-being of its population, whether that be you know, physical or economic, you know, as well as any person who might come within its borders. So they've taken a lot of measures to assure the health and safety of visitors as well. And we can go into some of what that looks like. I think that the slow approach to reopening is smart. And yeah, I think that ultimately, if you are in a position where you're considering travel or not, note that not every decision is personal, and it's going to be based on the factors in your own personal life. But always, it's incredibly important to be looking, at the authorities of your own country and of the country that you would want to visit, and just really assessing. I think that this first few months of reopening to travel are going to be kind of like exploratory, and things will change, based on how it goes. I think that's just, we have to be open to change right now, like, and shifting and being able to pivot and all that. So the traveler would have to be, obviously, as well,
Yeah, Costa Rica at the beginning of the pandemia was listed as an example in terms of mitigating the spread of the virus itself. They applied openly and publicly that they were going to follow the hammer and the dance philosophy. And so they have done that, by opening and closing and using data to drive decision making. One thing in particular that I really have appreciated is that when it comes to making decisions, it's not the president of the country getting up and speaking all the time. It's actually the Minister of Health and also the director of our social security system and our healthcare system, with guidance, of course, from a team. That said, a lot of people are saying that he's had too much power and that there isn't a balance between health and economics, as Adrienne talked about. So with respect to Costa Rica opening, I think it's a good thing that they've taken their time. They have implemented a lot of protocols, not only at the airports, but businesses. Getting a little bit more detailed, our community has taken it upon themselves. Over 80 businesses have formed a new alliance, and they developed best practices using the protocols developed by the Ministry of Health, developed by the Costa Rica Tourism Board, Airbnb protocols, and they made their own checklist and took the best from all of those and have actually been training local businesses and actually going and auditing the businesses. And they've created their own little responsible tourism certificate. And we're trying to guide them and say, hey, you can't be juez y parte, which means you can't be the judge and the participant. You have to get a third party entity. But where I'm going with this is that our community is very proactive, and it's great to see that happening. And even more so because we're at the footsteps to a marine national park, which is obviously government. The policy and protocols to go inside the park now are quite strict. You have to use a QR code to send your information in. They're not accepting cash anymore. You have to wash your hands. So there's all these safety mechanisms that have been put in place for visitors. So I think that it's good that we're starting to slowly but surely open up. I mean, Costa Rica, as many of you probably know, depends on tourism as its income generating activity. And, unfortunately, Costa Rica doesn't have the capacity to bail out a bunch of businesses, on a very personal level. We've been lucky that the bank allowed us to delay payments on our loans that we owe. But yet we're still not receiving that much tourism because we've opened up Airbnb and we're receiving people from San Jose for, 3 or 4 nights, but it's not enough to continue. We're going to have to continue to pivot and utilize our network that has been so generous already to continue to employ our local 3 powerful ladies and stuff like that. So I think it's a good thing overall that they're opening up cautiously.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so important just to know that information and to hear it from the locals' mindset as well, knowing that you guys are working so closely with the community. And again, with our series on reopening destinations, we're not saying destinations had reopened, you should travel. It's more just like, just because you can travel, should you? And if you decide to, which Adrienne, like you're saying, it's a very, very personal decision depending on who you are, what your personal circumstances look like, where what your job is, where you live. And so there's all of those considerations to take into account. And what we're trying to do with putting this information out there is to, number one, share the local perspective, and even saying, should travelers be visiting, are we wanted there? And then number two, if someone decides to go, how can they do so in an informed way? And the other thing that I want to talk about, we'll open it up to Q&A in a moment. We have about 15 minutes or so left. So if you have a question, feel free to pop it into the Q&A. I see that there's already a handful of questions in there. But one thing I do want to touch upon today is if someone is unable to travel to Costa Rica right now, or they choose not to for whatever reason, are there still ways for them to support the local community from a distance at this point?
Yes, most definitely. We have to that, basically allowing people to contribute, but not just to contribute with no added value. We've developed over 30 yoga tutorial videos.
No, 50 or 60, I think, actually.
A surf, stretch, and strength series, and your digital cookbook.
We have two cookbooks now. One is a vegetarian cookbook for kids that actually Travis's daughter decided to make, kind of her. It was like a homeschool project. It's really cool. She did that based on our larger and more extensive Bodhi cookbook, which is based on the surf and yoga camp kitchen recipes that people had. It was funny, people had actually been asking me to create a recipe book for about maybe 4 years, and I was like, I'll get to it, and then it just took a global pandemic to get to it. But so that's also on the page as well. And
we have our Spotify music list on the page.
We have
basically everything that we could give, we've done.
Yeah.
And it's all free, but we do, say suggested donations are more than welcome. And, that's really been the way that we've been able to continue employing our staff. It makes me want to cry. The amount of support that we've received from our guests, it just confirms, that like what we're doing is right. And I know some of the people probably on this call are our past guests, and they've contributed maybe more than once, twice. There's some people that have contributed 5 different times, and we're not talking just $10. Some people have donated $250, other $500. And it's really, gosh.
And this, we made a commitment internally that we were gonna sink or float as a team. So that's our goal right now. We see the other side of this thing. We don't know exactly, where or how far. The bridge keeps moving a little bit, but that's what we're doing, is just trying to get ourselves to the other side of this, and yeah, stay together as a team and a family, which is what we are. And people can also help support by purchasing essentially a travel voucher if they feel like when it's safe to do so, they can they want to come down. Essentially what that does is just the deposit of the trip, it gets deducted from the total amount, and we have totally loosened up our like the cancellation or whatever, COVID related cancellation policy. All of that information is kind of like everywhere on our website, so people can see that. And I think if people were interested in donating to the community at large, we have ways to do that. It would be through Somos, which is that community organization that we were talking about, and that would go to a number of different projects in the area as well. So there's a few ways, and those are all listed, I guess, easily on our website. Also, we are going to be doing these Best of Bodhi starting later this month. So it's kind of like a little mini. We'll do a cooking class, a surf class, kind of like surf theory class, and then a yoga class. We're going to be doing these like twice a month. So if people are interested, again, these are going to be just by donation events, kind of fun things for people to jump in on and get a taste, should they want to hear a little bit more about what we do and our passions. So yeah, lots of ways.
I love that. I love how you guys have a little bit of everything. Food is one thing that I keep personally coming back to because I think it's such an easy way to transport yourself without actually having to go somewhere. And I love the fact that you guys have the playlists and the classes and just ways that you can kind of put yourself in that headspace, even if you're at a distance. We do have a couple of questions that are in here. Dennis asked, do you offer the sustainable products listed to non-guest? So that's, I think, what you were talking about before with the recommendations pre-trip. And I guess my add-on question for that is, can we get that link into our follow-up email as well to make sure that all of our attendees can get it?
Yeah, so to answer the question, we don't hold inventory of any of those products. The partnerships with those companies is that
list though, right?
Yeah, we do have, we can send a sustainable pre-trip purchase guide. But our main emphasis is to educate and then empower them once they go back home to buy. So all these companies, what they've done is given us loaner, basically like Clean Canteen loaner bottles. We have tons of Clean Canteen bottles. So during the week, if you don't show up with one, we give you one. And then most people are like, yeah, can I buy that? I'm like, no, we don't carry inventory. Once you get back home, you can buy here. You know, same thing with the sunscreen and all other products.
But these are products that we definitely like swear by, we use here. This bottle I love to talk about. I bought it in like 2007, I think. And so that was 13 years ago. And it's you know, it's been dropped a lot, but it's still going super strong. So these are products that like, they last, you know, they are built to last. And are, you know, like we didn't talk too much about B Corp and 1% for the planet, but a lot of them are one or the other or both certified, which is really cool as well.
Ami had a question that we touched upon briefly, but just to run through this again, if you want to add anything else, he asked, how has the pandemic affected you? I know people can visit Costa Rica right now, but there's still many restrictions. So if there's anything else that you want to add along to that.
Yeah, so I mean, basically since April, March, we haven't been able to receive guests, and we've really just been sustaining ourselves through contributions from our network, and recently opened up to start doing surf lessons again, but still the market's not there. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that, because I'm the one that deals with the inquiries, is that I'm noticing is people want to come down, but then after they make the inquiry, they write back and they're like, oh man, I didn't know that once I got back from Costa Rica, I'll have to go into quarantine for 14 days. And I can't afford to do that. So there's still that, like, even though we're open, you know, are people really going to be able to come down? We're even thinking about limiting our capacity to 5 people per week. We can do that. We're nimble. You know, we only accept 10 right now, but if we have to reduce to 5 so that people feel secure or more secure, because with 10, we're super secure because we spread everybody out. So our property is quite large, relatively speaking. They can be spread out. So,
and just, I would say personally, while this has been really challenging, it's also been really exciting here for us. We've been able to develop some of these cool resources. Pilar, our business partner, and his wife offered a yoga philosophy course that was like, I've been, you know, business partners with Pilar for 10 years and friends with her for longer. And the amount I learned in 16 hours of classes, it just kind of solidified. It was the right moment for me to have taken the course, and it just solidified so many things about what we're doing and personal stuff. And so it's been really cool to utilize this time, because when we are busy, we are so busy, you know, we are running around all the time, and it's really fun, but we've never really had this opportunity. So we're trying to take it as that, you know, as an opportunity to rest, to pause, to surf a lot, you know, to get into nature, to reflect about what it is. It's kind of weird, you know, we wouldn't have planned a global pandemic for our 10th birthday party, but it happened. And, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it is a really unique opportunity for us to strengthen as a business, as individuals, and hopefully as a global community as well. And so I think, yeah, we are staying positive. It's not easy to do that all the time, but we are staying positive. And I can say with 100% certainty, a lot of good is coming out of this for us here at Bodhi.
And then Erin had a question. saying, I'm curious if they could speak on how COVID-19 is basically just a dress rehearsal for the way climate change will impact this industry. And as a follow-up, what small hoteliers can do to prepare for the future. So I'll pass that. That's a big one pass over to you guys.
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit, like being, we've been environmentalists longer than we've been business owners. And we definitely try to take environmentalism and weave it in. I think that I've always kind of had this idea that this is an impending thing. And I think that a health pandemic is an environmental pandemic as well. All of these things are interrelated, and I think it's good for us to have something that is relatively, like, we're all generally, not all, like obviously a lot of people are affected by the health aspect of this, but it is interesting for us to slow down the machine of the system of the capitalist system that we all live under, and to see that we actually can, because I felt personally that we had been told that you can't shut things down, you can't shut down entire industries, and it turns out you actually can, and sometimes you must. So I think that everyone individually is trying to become, like Travis said, more nimble, more resilient, trying to pivot, figure out what they can do. That is essentially what we're trying to do, is figure out how we can be, continue with our purpose and mission, as well as continue trying to, generate some income to keep our staff employed, and our doors open. But I think that, yeah, this is a really important moment for all businesses to take a really, really hard look in the mirror and say, am I contributing right now to being a part of the solution or the problem? And so I would say a personal recommendation for any business right now, if you're not B Corp certified or 1% for the Planet certified, like, take this time right now and go ahead and start doing that. I believe that that's things like the B Corp certification, being a responsible business, working that into every aspect of your operations is going to eventually, and probably not too far down the line, be government mandated. Like, it's going to be that, yes, government's going to say, businesses, you have to start doing more and you have to start doing better. So why not get ahead of that? Why not start now, And obviously as individuals, I think this is a wake-up call. I think this is a wake-up call for everyone, really. But what we choose to do with that is very critical. It can't just be this light bulb with no action following it.
Just to add to that, we live in a community that, looking at climate change and sea level rise maps that have been produced through the world of academia and nonprofit initiatives, that is very high risk. The Marina Ballena National Park is extremely flat. As the ocean rises, we've seen over years that the shoreline is being eroded at an accelerated rate. So to answer kind of Erin's question, like, what, this is a dress rehearsal for what climate change is going to do to the industry. It's like, well, let's start looking at, like Yvon Chouinard said, 100 years down the line. And this is not even coming from Yvon Chouinard. These are philosophies that came from, indigenous populations all around the world, right? It's like looking 7 generations out and really start trying to figure out, like, what actions I can take now that will help, and it's also a time to recognize that we're all walking contradictions too, right? That we are oftentimes trying to be part of the solution, and we're also going to be part of the problem, and really just trying to figure out if you can be more part of the solution than the problem. For example, with our guest flights, we took that upon ourselves. It's like, okay, so the guests, in order to come and enjoy our services, they have to fly to get to us. We're sharing that responsibility, and we actually offset our guest flights. We'd like to encourage, moving forward, our guests to do that themselves. That way, the money that we're investing in offsetting their flights can actually be invested in reforestation efforts or coral reef farming efforts to mitigate some of climate change or sea level rise, which will happen to us. But at the end of the day, I think what we can do at Bodhi, and what we're attempting to do, and it's been proven through some very preliminary academic research papers, is the behavior change, using our business to help people. Primarily, our guests come from the United States, and primarily those are, quite frankly, the people that are living lifestyles that are damaging this beauty that we have all around us, right? So And then I think what was the other part of that? There was two parts to his question. What can small hotelers do is similar to what I just said, like really listen to your community at a local level, and then look up regional level, national level. And then really, I think, just by being a B Corp company doesn't mean that your consumer is a B Corp person. So how can we do a better job as B Corp businesses, or whatever certification or whatever you're using, to really educate people and get them to start consuming more responsibly, I think is something that we can do.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, like, I think that, for us, even here, it always does feel like we're not quite doing enough. Like, we offset our guest flights, and I know that that's a big thing, and it's important, and it's worth celebrating, but is it enough? I don't know. These are things that I struggle with, I think it's not always an easy answer. Is it more worthwhile for us to operate the way we do, continuously trying to improve, or is it better for us to not? I think that that's very existential and always going to be up for debate. I feel like, though, there is this knowing that you can feel where you're trying really hard and you're never really satisfied and just getting complacent with what you have. Always trying to improve, always trying to do better. As Travis always tells me, we hold ourselves to a higher standard.
But who's defining that standard, right?
Yeah, well, I think
we have all the answers.
No. None of this is easy. None of this is simple. There isn't a roadmap. It's a lot of fumbling around blindly, but I think the intention and reflection and admission that we're not always perfect as individuals, as a business. These are important things that I just do want to make clear to people too, that it's not like someday you'll get to this place where you'll be like, I am nailing it. It's never that. It's a bit of a treadmill, but if you can enjoy that journey, then you cannot lose, I don't think.
It's a balancing of needs and wants. Write down all your needs and write down all your wants and see where they start to collide.
So we are just about out of time. I feel like we could keep talking about all of this forever. Some quick housekeeping before we go. Number one, these hours always fly by. And that is why we do have a Facebook group for our community to connect directly with one another. After this call, you all will have a link in your inbox in case you're not already in our Facebook group. And you can go ahead and join. I'll start a thread so that we can keep this conversation going. Second of all, thank you to everyone who purchased a ticket to today's event. We are hosting these events on a pay-what-you-can basis. Impact Travel Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit, so you help to support our initiatives, but throughout the pandemic, we've also been fundraising for tourism companies that have been impacted by the pandemic as well. So if you're able to purchase a ticket at any of your events, those resources go a long way for both us as a nonprofit as well as our local partners around the world. And number three, we do have our next online event is on September 17th, and it's our next conversation around reopening destinations and the ethics of travel during the pandemic. This time, we're going to be talking about the perils of under-tourism and how tourism coming to a standstill has had a negative impact on conservation efforts. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Rwanda and Uganda and a lot of the conservation efforts that are happening there as well. And we also are working on an in-depth blog post that has a ton of resources to become more familiar with all of these ideas. Last but not least, I do want to leave the mic with Adrienne and Travis. My very last question for you all before we go is just if there's one concept that you all are teaching at Bodhi that someone can start thinking about today while they're at home, what would you like our travelers and our community to be thinking about?
For me, it's simplicity. Try and really think about how you can simplify your life. And in doing so, I think you'll find that activity enlightening, really looking at just ways that you can minimize your consumption, and I don't know. For me, everything is all about simplifying. Although I'm a very complex person that creates a lot of challenges for others.
Mine is just kind of very similar. It's just like slow down, you know, enjoy the little things, and sort of finding ways to simplify and create happiness or connect with happiness in ways that are perhaps, you know, more sustainable, more long lasting than maybe just the consumption of items.
And I think through doing that, you will awaken more purpose.
And I just want to end by saying thank you so much, Kelly.
Yes.
This was a really, really nice conversation. And thank you so much to Impact Travel Alliance for all the really, really cool work that you guys do. I'm super excited to just be exploring more of that myself personally. And this was just really fun for having us.
Thank you both so much. The pleasure was mine. I'm looking forward to staying in touch. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
You too. Ciao.
Bye.